Which high school?
No, she's at Gilbert.
Which she have next year?
Oh, classical.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great, I got a team there too.
Yeah. Oh, great.
Wrestling is a team.
Oh, I think you said I have a team there.
No, wrestling has.
Yeah, I like the coach.
I'm up for live.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the April meeting of the Policy Committee meeting. We are calling this meeting to order at 5:34 p.m. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda? Moved by Ms. Newman, I second. All in favor? Aye. Agenda is approved. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? So moved by Ms. Newman, I second. All in favor? Aye. Excellent. We will get right down to business now and begin with our policy and planning items. Item 4.1 is the suicide prevention, response, and recovery policy. Do we have folks here from the district to present? Please introduce yourselves with your name and your title and go right ahead.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Natalie Fleming, Director of SEL and Mental Health for the district. And we have our social work and mental health team. Introduce yourselves.
Amy Messenger, School Social Work Specialist.
I'm Tanya Almeida, School Social Work Specialist.
I'm Wendy Souza, the Family Rose School-Based Mental Health Initiative.
Excellent. Thank you all for being here tonight.
So I have extra copies if you need them. Yeah, on the packet. So this is the first read of the suicide prevention, response, and recovery policy. This is in response to the Nathan Bruno Act, which was mandated, was passed in 2021, which mandated all school districts to develop a policy for suicide prevention. In that policy to create regulations so that every adult who services or is in the presence of youth is trained in suicide prevention. So that includes the warning signs, being able to understand risk factors and protective factors, and then how to respond when there is a crisis or a situation. So we've had a policy that we followed since 2007-ish, is the Rhode Island School Suicide Prevention Protocol. So we've had an intervention in place for a very long time, but we have never had an actual policy to talk about really a multi-tiered approach to supporting preventative approaches to suicide and crisis, and then how we intervene and support students and families, and then unfortunately, if there is a death by suicide, how we respond consistently across the district to support our students, our families, and our staff. So this policy really reflects a multi-tiered approach, which aligns to the MTSS policy that was recently passed last year, and breaks down how we would provide preventative services, training for both youth and staff, and our community, and then how we would respond. So it breaks down our intervention policy, our protocol, and then our response. It also lays out how we maintain this and sustain this approach through district-based teams, so multidisciplinary team that includes mental health professionals, as well as school crisis teams at every school. And do you want to talk about the training? So part of this is really putting together what we have been doing into more of an operationalized way, and then being able to communicate that out to our families, our schools, our staff, and training consistently. And we have identified a few curriculums that we are going to adopt to be a part of this, the regulations, and then Amy can speak to what's been done currently, and then the plan to continue to build on that.
So one of the curriculums that RIDE has vetted and endorsed is Erica's Lighthouse. And so all of our school social workers, school psychologists, many school counselors have been through that training. And then additionally, 2 summers ago, there was a work group for the health teachers to embed that within their curriculum for students. So that is currently, to my knowledge, being done during health class. So the plan would be for that training to expand to all staff members.
Let the record reflect that Vice President Escobar has joined the committee as well. Thank you for that presentation. Can you maybe share a little bit about internally which teams you've worked with to develop this policy besides your team that's here today?
So this has been kind of a work in progress for many years, but we worked so DNCR for the school counseling program, so they are part of our annual training, definitely part of our school crisis teams, our student support teams, the nursing staff as well, health services, PE and health teachers. As Amy had mentioned, they went through kind of a revamp of the health curriculum, and this was a big piece of that last summer, where they were all trained on how to build this into the health curriculum. And then
Yeah, the FACE office, family and community engagement. Additionally, the policy started by us looking at a national model on suicide prevention, where we kind of took it a step further, like Natalie had described, in terms of the different tiers.
and community partners as well, RISAS, the Rhode Island Student Assistance Services, and Bradley Hospital have been a big part of this. We've been working with RISAS since 2007 initiation of the Rhode Island Suicide Prevention Initiative and the protocol. We follow a flow chart. We didn't submit this early, but I have some copies that they pass it around, that showcases the protocol that we follow. The whole thing. I think there's like 5 copies. But on that 4th slide, you'll see an updated flow chart that we've continuously improved upon over the years working with RISAS. They have Rhode Island Student Assistance Services, and they generally are the ones in the state who receive the funding to maintain the suicide prevention initiative. I'm not sure if you've heard of KidsLink, but that's the connection with Bradley Hospital, where we can call to make sure that there is a high risk, if somebody's in that red zone we see and needs immediate support. We're going to send them to the hospital immediately to ensure safety. But if they're in kind of that needs to be seen but not in that high risk area, then we can connect with KidsLink, who will set up a same-day crisis evaluation for us, and or help us connect to something that can, so that we can make sure that there's support in place for that student.
Just to add, there's also, as part of that partnership with KidsLink, the ability for families. So this wouldn't be in the policy, but there's an added piece for families where if they consent, they have to join. The Access Center, rather will follow up. They will follow up with the family to make sure if they needed any community support. It's like that they'll follow up with them at 2 weeks and 2 months, so that families and community connections aren't dropped, as well as following up with the school.
Something that we'd like to move towards, the Erin's Lighthouse, which is that curriculum, offers a parent engagement piece, and so our hope is to be able, in collaboration with that office, offer virtual sessions for parents district-wide to understand what their students receiving in the school. We've done versions of that in the past, but I think through this policy that will become more streamlined and a universal way to kind of present that to our families.
Thanks. I appreciate the presentation and all the work that's been done. Thank you so much. How are families involved with, I guess 2 different questions, like have families been asked what they think about this policy? I think about myself as a parent, like just wanting to know, like, yeah, like if my teenagers exhibiting signs, like do they kind of get thrown into like a system within the school that I'm like completely out of touch with, or just kind of follow up, like, or I'm sorry, I'm like rambling right now. I have a lot going on in my mind. I'm wondering two different questions. Were families involved in developing any piece of this? And also, I guess if you could kind of clarify at what point are parents alerted that there might be an issue before, we'll kind of start going through the steps of policy.
I can do that. So, well, the policy itself is, the policy as it stands is a lot of what is required by RISE. So you have to have these steps in. So you'll see there are parts where folks are required to notify parents. So if a child is at risk and they're screened, there's a step in the policy where parents are notified. But my understanding is following the acceptance of the policy, there then our guidelines are flushed out, and that's where you would also be talking more with the face office. So like how do we, now that this is our policy that we're required to have, how do we communicate to that to families? How do they know? So there's kind of, and then there's also the communicating to parents, the prevention piece. So families and parents would also be, once it's decided, this is the policy, they're regularly communicated, they can opt out of the prevention curriculum. You notify them that they're getting that. The intention is to, through FACE, I believe, although this will also be part of the guidelines, would be to offer the same training to parents. They can see what their kids are getting, give them an opportunity to ask questions. And then they're notified by the schools before their grade receives it. In health, it's usually part of a newsletter or something like that. That would be in the guidelines piece, not necessarily the policy itself.
I'd say I appreciate that question a lot because part of, like, it is mandated now by law, which is great, but I think this has always been a part of like student support staff who've been working in schools, working in district, trying to create a protocol where it is consistent and we can train and we can bring more people in and engage and then improve upon it, right? Because we don't necessarily always have the opportunity to have those conversations. So I think the ultimate goal is to like get this out there in an operationalized way to have people be able to start to see it and say like, how can we really create some regulations that do engage families, engage youth? Because right now there isn't a good way of saying like, hey, here's what we do. What's your input on that? So we can continuously improve it. I think it happens right at like that grassroots level. But I think this is a really important opportunity to make this like district-wide protocol that can continuously be looked at and and then the regulations will follow. So that's what I'm working on now is putting all of kind of the guidelines, best practice together to follow this. And all of those pieces, again, going through that process of getting that continuous reporting. And just the reality of like what's happening, because we've gone through a lot of different variations of intervention protocols of how we intervene, but we definitely have not talked enough about how we're preventing that and how we're integrating it into just like what we're doing as a whole. Even the intervention piece, I think there's been so many conversations with Bradley and Kinslink and and we've gone through this. It's not always a straightforward process of like you call and sometimes you don't get like a response that you want, and so you're on the phone for 2 hours trying to make that happen. So there's a lot of things happening right now to try to improve collaboration across systems. But I think this is a really important first step for us as a district to like say that we own this as a district, and we're going to continue to make it a priority to continuously advancing.
Yeah. My thought is around social media, mental health, and youth, right? Doing studies about correlation of suicide rates and active social media use. And I don't know if this is like the appropriate policy to call out some of that. I also don't know if we do much around social media. I know like in middle schools, like in certain schools, we're starting to take away phone usage in the schools. I'm a fan of, but I think it's becoming more, the correlation between social media usage young people, direct impacts on mental health. And also my other thought, I guess, comment is just the lack of mental health professionals we have in our schools and guidance counselors. And, I don't know if, obviously it's more of a funding aspect, but I guess on social media and what we're putting in for workshops, mental health, something the board should be thinking about. I don't know if it's appropriate in terms of like writing this out in this policy, but I mean, there is direct correlation between social media usage and suicide rates in this country.
Yeah, that's, I don't know, is there, that you know of a lesson?
I'm sure that there is, I've never instructed the students, when we've gone through like the staff facing, Erica's Lighthouse training, but that's something that we could certainly look into in terms of making sure, that that's included in, the student and staff training. I know our options were limited in terms of what curriculum to pick because it was, from a list from RIDE, and that's the one that we found. So, we also offer youth mental health first aid, which is like a 6 to 8 hour professional development. But that's really difficult to provide universally to all of our staff, given the time that it takes to instruct that class. There are a few schools that are beginning to offer teen mental health first aid in their buildings. In order to have that, you have to have 10% of your staff trained in the youth mental health first aid, so that way they know how to respond if a student is in need after receiving that. So, yeah, definitely worth continued conversation though, for sure.
Yeah, because I used to teach intro nonprofit class at a high school, and it amazes me the ways online bullying can happen, and maybe they're just sort of unseen between teachers or parents, and it's a whole nother aspect that this generation coming up is, and right, that's all part of the correlation, like increased online bullying, mental health, depression, suicide rates going on in this country, and not just our district, like just America public school system as a whole. We're not doing enough education around sort of the dangers of social media, right? Just online bullying and more of a social media etiquette and guidance for our young people. So again, I don't know if it's appropriate to call this out in this specific policy, but I think it's very, it's very relatable. We talk about prevention, right? That's a major piece of it. We're talking about that generation.
I do know that there, so in the prevention and education portion of it, so part of the legislation and the policy is that we'll be doing suicide prevention for all youth 6 to 12th grade. And that's also teaching young people to recognize signs in their peers. And that the policy does say kids identified at risk by staff or their peers. So basically, helping peers to recognize, if I see someone posting and I'm concerned, there's an acronym, they're following, they're reaching out to who's an appropriate person and appropriate adult to help in those situations. So that might be also something that we could make sure is included in the guidelines and regulations.
Also, you saying that reminds me that a library media specialist in the district, and I believe that it's not just in that building, but across the school buildings, does do lessons on like digital citizenship and responsible online relationship behavior, that sort of thing. So it might be, as we're doing the implementation guide, maybe we can include that those professionals in.
I want to echo, kind of bring together the comments from both other committee members. I think what I have heard in my parent work prior to being on the board is that parents are really not sure how to navigate all of this, like specifically around suicide prevention, but just mental health issues in general, and certainly social media. And I think that to date, I don't think schools have been equipped either with capacity or with resources of how to engage parents. And so I'm really, really excited to hear that that's part of this policy, because I've been in spaces where parents are asking schools, like, please tell us please tell us how to talk to our kids about responsible social media use, or please tell us how to, look for signs or flag concerns with our kids. And I don't think schools are ready yet, so this is a really important step in this sort of family of student supports to push that forward. So I really appreciate that you are adding that parent piece, and I know the FACE office will do a tremendous job. And I'll also do a shout out, because we have one of their co-chairs right here, that the Parent Advisory Council, who works closely with FACE, can be a great resource of helping screen some of those guidelines and regulations. Definitely reach out via FACE to them. And that council includes parents from all grade levels, all schools across the district, so that can be a great way. And just one more question around that. So you mentioned that, and I think I saw it in reading the draft policy, that this is mostly geared toward grades 6 through 12. Are there components that involve our elementary staff and students as well? And can you talk about those?
So the mandate, the legal mandate are for those grade levels. There is, Erica's Lighthouse does have tools within it to offer parent engagement sessions and learning sessions, as well as student empowerment groups, like clubs that kids can make, both like at elementary and secondary level. I don't believe we included that in our policy, but something we can work towards. Just around capacity and the number of mental health professionals in our building might be a potential area to that. But that would be ideal, is to have that at the elementary level and really focusing on relationships and friendships and anti-bullying, that sort of thing.
And I think part of maybe we can add to, so like at the elementary level, a lot of the health curriculum and social emotional learning is integrated in that social emotional health of like healthy decision making or healthy relationship skills, building self-awareness, building self-management, so building kind of those building blocks for mental health and suicide prevention. But I think maybe we need to be a little bit more explicit of like that is kind of the trajectory of maybe about the curriculum and training for youth across the grade levels. So it's kind of setting that foundation. So it might not be specific to suicide prevention, like using the word suicide, but it's really about like how we build your social emotional health and making positive decisions, being a good friend, being in a healthy relationship, having self-awareness to when I'm like feeling a certain way, how to manage that feeling. So those are definitely pieces that we want to make sure are regulated, that students are taught in their curriculum and throughout the curriculum.
And all staff receive the training, not just 6 to 12 staff. All staff receive it, just 6 to 12 students.
Oh, I think I missed that part, so thank you for flagging that, because I think that's really important. And as a mom of teenagers, I can say that younger and younger and younger kids are dealing with mental health concerns that maybe we weren't as aware of before, and so that's great that all of our staff across our schools. I think, and as to the piece of sort of the building blocks that happen in elementary schools, maybe that also comes somewhere in the regulations or guidelines to sort of connect these other pieces of committee members. Do you have that?
I do have one more question. I think under assessment referral, it's just a question, not really. I don't know exactly what I feel about this, other than there's something that's unsettling to me as a parent to think that my kid would be assessed in school before I'm talked to. Do you know what I mean? And I think that that's the sort of flow here, which in some ways makes sense, and in some ways I get that, but I just wonder if there's some nuance there that I'm not reading into well enough, or if there is like maybe just for your team to consider, just like I feel like before young people are getting like evaluated to that level in a school, like I think parents should be notified first and should be in on that conversation versus just followed up with. While I know that that's not just the intention, but I think it can kind of read that way of like, we're going to assess your kid, kind of make determinations about what's going on with them, and then we're going to let you know. As a parent, I would be like, no, I want to be there. I want to be in on that. And I also want to be in on making the plan for what happens, not just like communicating with about what the plan will be. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, so they're gonna assess the student's risk level. So nobody's gonna do an evaluation of your child without letting you know. So part of the flow chart, there's a fourth slide on there. So by law, if a student, or anyone, right, has said like, I want to kill myself, or I want to harm somebody else, we have to respond to make sure they're safe or somebody else is safe. So that is the first level of screening. So we think sometimes the term assessment or evaluation feels very heavy. So, and maybe we can look at how it's written here, but it's really just assess the student's risk level. So like if I'm the school psychologist and somebody comes to me and says that a student just said that, I'm gonna go and just ask them, like, are you feeling like you want to kill yourself? And use the words very clearly. And if it is yes, then we are calling the parent and we are starting that whole process of the evaluation and the plan with you.
Got it.
So it's really just assessing risk and then using those, almost like color coding, right? So red is like, we gotta get this student safe. Like that is our main thing. They're in immediate danger. We're gonna get them safe. Sometimes that may result in calling an ambulance as we're calling the parent. But that's at that like high level where I need to make sure that this child is okay. But that's the extreme level. So if they're in that, like, we really need to get them seen because they're really having these intense emotions right now, that plan starts with you. Yeah. But I think that's why it's important, as you're all saying, is to review it because we all are in the field and use these terms. But I can see as a parent, like assessing risk, you would be like, wait a minute. The other thing,
I'm sorry, the one thing I was gonna say is realistically, the prevention is happening way before it gets to the point of a student endorsing suicidal ideation, right? So if I'm a social worker in school and I'm treating your child, I'm seeing your child, I'm building a relationship with you, so I'm letting you know like, hey, I saw so-and-so today and I'm a little bit concerned about their mood, right? So the hope is that we can get to that point of school social workers, school psychologists, all the support staff in schools, building positive relationships with families, so that way, when we call you to say, I have Johnny in our office, and we're really worried about him, you already have that established relationship with the support staff, right?
the only thing I would add that I just kind of want for our team that made me think of, not so much the online bullying, which I think is important because the research is 100% there, especially for our young females, is the security and tech programming. Because I know we have it built in, but we didn't put it in here as far as securely that we use. But it flags, so it's like with Chromebooks, through COVID, it was students. Yeah, so on any of their Chromebooks or any devices, the tech policy is if there's anything that's typed in that is like a message that's concerning, it gets flagged right away. So we probably should add that in here, that we have those programs.
Committee members,
Is there a motion to approve?
I think we might have one question from. You can have it. Can you introduce yourself again?
Hi, Aubrey Johnson, Parent Advisory Council Co-Chair. Parent. So when you brought up the Chromebooks, that just reminds me of you. It made me think of, is there a way to have something on the Chromebooks where if a child's in distress, there's a way they could reach out to someone?
Digitally.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about Chromebooks, but I do know that there are, and I believe our social workers and sites have, there are text numbers and lines if they would. I see what you're saying. So if someone prefers not to go to the
So if I'm in
school-
class and I'm feeling depressed, suicidal, and I don't feel like I can talk to anyone, or I'm uncomfortable talking, right, and I'm on my Chromebook, if there's like an email I can send, and it'll go to guidance, or it'll go to the nurse, or it'll go to someone. And then they can, like, the office can hold them down or something like that.
There might be individual schools, like families, and these, just have so many schools, and I think some some we have that set up, that like at a district level, we don't have anything like that. We actually were just talking about, like on your phone, like having something, but then we're creating all these policies so that you don't have your whole,
Yeah, yeah.
but on the Chromebook is a different idea.
If
So
it's
no, I
like
guess
through
the
an
short answer is
email
no, not
or
right now.
something like that, then the email goes to whoever with like a flag on it, you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah.
Doesn't have to be something super fancy, right? And then would there be a way for parents to reach out to staff members if they had concerns about their child? I didn't see anything like that in the policy.
It's not in the policy, but again, I know that every school team has kind of their own way of doing that. There's some have like requests for assistance that they can do, some have websites. I know that parents can connect, an email. I think having like our support staff on the website would be helpful for each school. We talked about that as an
And
option.
I'm wondering too if we could add parents, on students identified by staff, peers, or parents as experiencing the crisis. So add them to, the assessment and referral, letter C as just a source for the school's crisis team.
And maybe in like the implementation guide that we're writing, we can do guidance for our staff around like you should be introducing yourself at the beginning of the school year through like a newsletter, some sort of communication, right? Whatever that school seems like to use, so that way parents are aware.
So I know what you're saying about different schools have different ways of implementing. I, as a parent, would feel more comfortable if it was part of the policy, because some schools do nothing. You know what I mean? Some may have it on the website, but people don't know how to access the website. You know what I mean? And I think that's important too, because some parents might not know how to talk to their kids about it. Some parents might not feel comfortable. Some parents might know that their kids don't feel comfortable talking to them about it, or might know they have a rapport with someone in the school where that relationship can lead to more conversation.
Thank you so much for those questions, Ms. Johnson, and I agree that, I think we'd like to see that language added there for parents to be able to flag concerns. Do we have a motion to approve this policy for first read at the next board meeting? Second, any further discussion? There being none, all in favor? Aye. Excellent. So we will see this policy at our full school board meeting at the end of April. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming and presenting tonight. We appreciate your work.
Thank you so much.
The next item on our agenda this evening is the school closing policy. Do we have someone here from the district to present, or is that going to be excellent?
That's me, James Scott, Director of Intergovernmental Affairs. I don't have a lot to say about it. I thank the committee, the chairwoman for tabling it last month, which gave the district a chance to review. So Solicitor Ruggiero has had a chance to review. The superintendent and the deputy superintendent also had a chance to review. So we made a couple of minor wording changes. I highlighted those in yellow that I made. We can also benchmark it against the document from the last meeting. And we put it back in the board's hands at this point. We don't have any opposition to it at this point.
Thank you. Committee members, any comments or questions about this policy as written?
I do not, and I would toss it back to my fellow members of the contemporary decision-making change. I think this is fine for a first read, and then getting it to the board for any additional language or other aspects we can add.
I see we have another board member here with us this evening. Do other board members have questions or comments about the policy as written right now? Excellent.
Motion to approve.
So I hear a motion to approve this policy for first read at the school board. Do I have a second? second from Ms. Newman. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Excellent. We will see this April 24th board meeting as well. Thank you so much. And finally, this evening, we are talking about our graduation policy draft, and I know we have a team here tonight. Please introduce yourselves and share what you would like with us tonight.
Hi, my name is Nikki Keegan. I am Executive Director of Curriculum and Instruction. I have with me Gina Sylvia.
Gina Sylvia, Director of School Council.
And we bring before you tonight our draft of the graduation policy. Would you like me just to go right into that?
Sure.
So you have it before you. The rationale for bringing this policy before the committee is that secondary regulations were passed, and we're required by law to have a new policy beginning with the incoming ninth graders, so the class of 2028. So the new regulations that were passed go into effect for the class of 2028, so our incoming ninth graders for next year. We're required to have a new policy and notify them and their families, so that is why there's a new policy before you. Just a little bit about the anatomy of the policy. There's the first part is the existing graduation policy that applies to our classes of 2025, 26, and 27. So our incoming 12th, 11th, so next year's 12th, 11th, and 10th graders. And then we have the second half of this document is the policy that would apply to the class of 2028 or the incoming ninth graders. So we'll have, starting next year, students in the same high schools who have different requirements for graduation. Some of the major points for the existing policy, or the policy for the current or the graduating classes of 25, 26, and 27, there was language in the existing policy about retention, about progressing from grade to grade, how many credits are required, and then also grading. Those are no longer in this version of the policy because the grading policy has already been passed. And then we'll do a separate policy or document for our standalone policies for retention and progression. So it was just kind of too much we wanted to keep the graduation policy just strictly related to graduation.
That goes, if I can jump in, that goes back to the previous policy chair, Robert Santana, who sort of challenged us to separate policy and regulation, and we had a lot of things that were jumbled up over the years.
Okay. And then probably what you're wondering most about is what are the major differences under the new regulations, starting with the class of 2028. And there are a few. So first, technology, which is a technology course is required for students in the rising. What's easier for me to say graduating class of 25, 26, and 27, or like next year's 10th, 11th, and 12th graders? I don't know what's.
I guess
Doesn't matter. Okay.
Whatever feels more natural to you.
Current high school students. So they've been required to have a technology credit to graduate. That will change and become computer science. So computer science will be required for all students to graduate, starting with the class of 2028. And computer science discoveries, or AP computer science, are the courses that are eligible for graduation credit. We offer both currently. All students must complete a civics project, so that's new. That is currently being offered in their 10th grade civics course. Students, the third key point or major difference is that students who are not in CTE take 4 math classes, beginning with Algebra 1, followed by Geometry and Algebra 2, and then an advanced math class while they're in high school. The reason I'm calling that out is because currently, if a student takes Algebra 1 in 8th grade, that credit can be applied towards graduation. Starting with 2028, they still take Algebra 1 in 8th grade, that goes on their transcript for high school, but that credit doesn't count towards graduation anymore. They have to take their 4 high school math credits while they're in high school. Does that make sense? Okay.
Sorry, just to clarify, so that means if they already had the Algebra 1, they would start with, say, Geometry, Algebra 2, and then they'd still need 2 more math credits.
Yes. Yeah, so they don't start over in Algebra 1, they can still start from geometry, but that Algebra 1 currently from 8th grade counts towards graduation currently, it won't starting in 2028.
So they don't stop taking math, they just keep going
Yeah,
with
we
math.
get to that advanced
until
level.
Yeah, and like I said, yep, they have more advanced math classes. Sorry, I lost my place. Okay, so, with CTE again, students who are on track to complete CTE, they can use one of their CTE courses for their 4th math, so this is another, key difference, as long as they take 2 college prep electives. So, both of their electives that take any electives must be college prep. So if somebody who's in a CTE pathway, one of those courses can count towards as a 4th math. 5th, students who are not in CTE, who are taking the 4 math classes in high school, one of their electives has to be college prep. So if they're in CTE and using a CTE course as a 4th math, they need 2 college prep elective credits. If they're not in CTE and they're doing 4 math classes, they need 1 college prep elective. CTE students may receive credit for work-based learning. Districts can create courses or opportunities that allow for flex credit. So you'll see the term flex credits in the new regulations. An example of that is if a humidity course covers that creates ELA and social studies standards, a student could receive 2 credits under the regulation. So it's de-emphasizing seat time and emphasizing proficiency or flexibility. All students must complete an annual individualized learning plan, ILP, that outlines their progress towards proficiency, their plan to meet proficiency and graduation requirements, and receive the support necessary to achieve proficiency. We do that already in Providence, but that's part of the regulations. Students and families must receive annual written notification of their progress toward graduation. And then finally, special education students can engage in readiness pathways if their team, so the school team plus the family determines that it's appropriate. So that's in the regulations also. So that's a kind of an overview of the key differences for the class of 2028. And that's all contained in this policy.
That's a very specific question. There's more toward a lot of the world that I'm in outside of, but the financial literacy, and I know like we have that passed statewide, and it's and I've heard about this. I do need to do more examination. I know like Pride has had multiple ways to be able to check off that financial literacy requirement. So there's the online module, there's the course, and there's a test out option. What's the test out option?
It's an assessment, like Everfi, I believe, has the assessment.
Yes, it is.
It's one of them, and maybe Jumpstart, I believe.
There's a list.
Another.
Yeah, there's a
There's
list.
a list on Drive that are approved assessments that students can take.
And that's just state, right? And I know that could just be done, like we had a summer program that was incoming 9th graders, they went through summer program, they were checking out.
Yeah, and we offer, depending on the school, some classes, it is a course, some schools it is a course, some schools it is the assessment. So it could be different for students coming in if they need to receive that credit, so then we could meet it with the course or just the assessment, whatever works for their schedule.
Yeah, and thank you for refreshing a lot of that. And I knew that it's kind of like when it's in your face, you see like all the other things, and financial literacy among other things that we should probably have in our curriculum to graduate for students coming up. But there isn't like a uniform way for how schools tackle that aspect, and I think that's like my personal issue with it. You might have a group of students that go to one school and get like an in-depth, program, like the summer program. I work with Providence After School Alliance, students and programs, but they it was really in that program, right? And then you have like the test out option, and then you have like maybe course. So, whereas there's more of a uniform, aspect of, they need to go to English, you go to math, you go,
We've considered adding this course requirement embedded within another course.
yeah.
So that if a student is taking Algebra 2, it could be part of that Algebra 2, for example. I'm not saying it's Algebra 2, but we've talked about that.
And I know it's not necessarily a district problem, because it's like, this is a RIDE mandate, and everyone's handling it how they are looking to handle it. But I think it would be great if in Providence we could be sort of a leader in having, like a high quality financial education program for students to meet this requirement. Because I can't tell you what I remembered in, let's say, I don't know, like chemistry or, algebra, not to say like they're not boring, but, budgeting, credit,
Yeah.
savings, all of that, that stuff I had to learn a whole lot after. And I think that's definitely important for a lot of the students. Yeah, there's more commentary, sorry. Just more, I don't have really additional questions on this. Also, why is this not like in the format for, okay, yeah.
It will be, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With the comments. Is a lot of this also just like RIDE mandated too? Like, like most of this is probably just RIDE.
Yep.
Is there anything that's specifically like different for us, PPSD?
No. I'm trying to think about current versus 2028. I can answer that question for.
I guess that
No, because
question.
I'm thinking about the world. I'm just going through the requirements, like world language. Nope, it's
Some of them already
option.
existed with us.
Yeah,
Such
yeah,
as
like-
world language. We have required 2 years of a world language. That's a new requirement by right now, but it's been one that PPSD has had.
Like there have been times when we've required more than what the state is requiring. And so like right now, our students have been taking a standalone proficiency, diploma proficiency class. That wasn't required by the state, but our students have been doing it. So that was a Providence practice that we were doing. So there are some things that we were doing that have been more than, but no, everything that you're seeing in here is required by RIDE. I just don't want to answer that and be wrong, so I'm just looking to see if there are things that are specific to Providence.
Yeah, because then there's advocacy around groups around inclusion of ethnic studies as a graduation requirement. Why can't I call it civil studies? The studies, civic education, that's what I want to say. Civic education studies, like advocacy around.
And that's a requirement in the regulations too, so it will.
So isn't it embedded in like a specific class? Like I see American.
It is right now, it's in our 10th grade civics class.
Okay.
The world, social studies sequence of courses.
We partner with Generation Citizen to bring that requirement, like we don't have to
Oh, I see
partner
that.
with them,
I see
but
that.
yeah,
I
yeah.
see that.
So we have flexibility on how we do that, and currently this past year we've been partnering with them. But yeah, that is part of we build that into the 10th grade civics, and then they get it in middle school as well.
Yeah. Okay. But like, if there's other advocacy for graduation requirements, like district, even like there are other districts that have different graduation requirements of like courses or specific subject matters.
More credit.
So what RIDE provides is just what's the, like, this is what's absolutely required. It's up to the LEA to determine if there are other, like there are additions. Like we just can't do any less than what RIDE is asking us, is saying we need to do.
Okay.
I don't know if that answers your question.
No, I also just had like I'm pretty tired, so I've had like a jumbled up, like kind of.
No, that's okay.
Spitting out whatever in my.
That's all right, it's like the
whatever
wrong
was in
email
my
from
head,
people
so I'll
three
pause.
times today.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I have more questions than we'll probably, I feel like I need to do some of my own research to responsibly bring some questions. I do have a question around the civics project. Is that something that is like a one-time deal, or is that like a 4-year, like they're building a project over 4 years? Or is it kind of like embedded in a class?
It's embedded in a class.
Okay. Also, assuming, just as like an advocate for the arts, 0.5 credit. I'm assuming that's a RIDE thing, but I'm like, how do we give more space to students to explore? I think that's my biggest, it's more of a comment, I guess, than like anything that I'm sure you all struggle with too, is like, how do we give students more room for electives and exploration? As I'm thinking about things like attendance and engagement, like, I just think we don't give young people any room to like feel interested in any of the things, you know, like, yeah, like high school's a time to explore the things that like you might be interested in and learn, you know, some essential skills as well. So I guess that's more of a comment and maybe a question, just like, is there any more flexibility given the RIDE requirements to have more room for electives? I think it's tied to a larger question. I know just sort of with the refocusing on each high school having like Hope Academy for the Arts and like Juanita Sanchez Life Sciences and Firefighter Academy. For young people who don't make it into the CTE pathway, like how or do they still have access to some of those opportunities, you know, if they didn't make it into CTE?
They do, and that I think is also a focus of the new regs, is to expand the flexibility and to provide students more opportunities to have work-based learning. And I don't know if that's your understanding too, Jenna, but
Definitely, and I was thinking, we have 21 grad requirements, however, students have more courses than the 21 credits, right? So depending on the school schedule, they could get up to 7 credits each year. So that would be a total of 28 over the 4 years. But 21 of these specific ones are required, but the others would be of interest. Yeah.
There's also opportunities for arts with some of their after-school partners. I'd be glad to connect offline or, you know, maybe a future meeting and get you like sort of what that whole ecosystem looks like.
Yeah.
I'm sure AS220 is part of it, so.
Well, plus network,
Well, plus
Right.
network,
has multiple
Yeah.
course offerings.
Yeah, that was actually my actual, like, thank you for bringing that up. Another question I saw that, like, potentially, young people can get credits for work-based learning, or what sort of other, like, how, yeah, exactly, like, is that just through the advanced course network, or like, what does that look, does that change how that looks like for?
So our like next steps will be determining what this can look like in Providence, for like the flex credits, for example. I use the term yellow because I'm used to that, but that's there's more opportunity for that with the new regulations. It's just we have to figure out what that looks like in a district this size and how we're I won't use the word vetting, but how we're making that into a system and structure. And we're not there right now, but we do have a lot of the people in place and our department. So we have a really robust CTE program. We have our after school partners at PASA. We have so many different partners that we work with. And we have the regulations to support that work too. So so what that looks like is that the next steps.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mr. Stevens.
how are you? Really quick, just one question. Computer science, was that a requirement before, or is that being now added into the requirements?
It's added for the class of 2028. I think a common practice has been though to have all students take computer science. It's just that the standards they added. I thought it was 3. I think they've added 1 standard for the computer science standard. So the course that we've been offering, computer science discoveries, addressed a few of the standards. Now that it's a graduation requirement for starting the class of 2028, RIDE works with code.org, and they're reconfiguring the class that we offer computer science discoveries to address all 6 standards. And so starting with the class of 2028, they need to take the course that addresses all 6 standards. So there are other computer science classes that students might be taking now. If a student took that course, one of those classes next year as like a 9th grader, that wouldn't count towards their graduation requirement. So we have we'll have new standards for our computer science discoveries class starting for next year for the class of 2028, or they can take AP computer science and that will satisfy their requirement too.
And is it just one of those credits, or would they need both?
Just one.
Just
The
one.
computer science?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, one.
What year normally will they probably take those credits in?
It's really up to the school.
Sometimes it's 10th grade, 9th grade, maybe art. meeting that requirement, and 10th grade being computer science, but it could depend on the school. I know Q has several computer science courses because of their pathway.
Right. And then last question, do you guys know the rationale on why they took, Algebra 1 from 8th grade and pushed it up now to being sort of in the 9th grade? And
They didn't do that, sorry to interrupt, go ahead, finish your question.
No, go ahead.
So they haven't taken it, if anything, we want to expand Algebra 1 offerings in middle school. We want students taking Algebra 1 in 8th grade as much as possible. What's changed is that credit doesn't count towards high school graduation. So they still take it in 8th grade, start 9th grade, if they do that, start 9th grade with geometry. The current practice though is that credit from Algebra 1 in 8th grade would count towards graduation. It won't starting in 2028. So they can still take it in 8th grade.
Although many students took the 4 years anyway.
Yeah.
Got it. So it makes sense to push it to high school so they can just get that credit for them sort of taking it, since they won't get it in the 8th grade.
I don't know necessarily what the rationale behind that is. In all honesty, I'm not sure exactly what the rationale is behind that decision and the regulations, but it doesn't change the student experience as far as what they would start with in high school. There's still an advantage or benefit to taking Algebra 1 in 8th grade because you start in 9th grade with geometry, and your pathway to like calculus, for example, as a senior is it's a more direct path to calculus as a senior. So we want students to have the opportunity to take Algebra 1 in 8th grade and expand that access to them.
So wait, I'm sorry, I'm probably not understanding it right. So we Algebra 1, do we want students now to take that in the 8th grade, or would they have the option to either take it in the 8th grade or high school?
It's still the option. They can
Got it.
take
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
8th or 9th. It's
Got
the
it.
only thing that changes is just does that 8th grade, does that class count towards graduation or not? And it won't start in 2028.
Right,
They have to
okay.
take their 4 years of math have to be in 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you, I think it was a little fussy for all of us.
Yeah, probably. We're
Answering
used
that
to
question.
are so used to just practicing that, but yeah.
Right.
See how that would be
Okay.
confusing. Yep.
I do see that, building on that for world language requirements, students may still earn one of those credits during middle school if they demonstrate proficiency.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so their middle school, the graduation requirement, one of those credits can still be obtained in middle school.
I want to build on something that Vice President Esquire was touching on around the financial literacy piece and just talking about, can we build that into a course requirement? I just want to think for all of these about how are we being equitable for all of our high school students across the different schools and programs. I think Ms. Newman touched on as well through the redesign process, and some of the specialized programs that we're offering at our schools are amazing. But that means students at different schools have access to very, very different programming. And so how can we think about, maybe this is more of a philosophical question than a policy question, but how can we make sure that all of our students have access to robust programming for all of this? And I guess the other question to build on that, a question or concern I might have is around, I know that we every year face staffing challenges. That's not specific to Providence or Rhode Island. That's a national issue right now. And I know there's certain subject or content areas that we struggle with. With the change in regulations, are we concerned that with our staffing pipeline, are there areas where we may need to provide additional staff or where we don't have enough across all of our schools?
I can't really speak to that. I'm not sure what the implications for staffing would be, although there isn't much that's in here that we're not already doing, I guess I could say. So, at first pass, there doesn't seem to be a glaring. But I would have to defer probably to HR and for that.
Part of the reason I'm asking that, I followed a little bit along when RIDE was working through these regulations and changing the graduation requirements. And I remember that some of the objections during public comment and during the RIDE K-12 Council discussion focused on concerns about how soon this would be rolled out, and for some districts, whether they would just be logistically able to meet these student needs if these are the requirements. So I think that's really exciting that as far as we feel right now, that Providence is actually positioned well because we were already doing some of the things in here. So
Yeah,
whenever I can give Providence schools a high five, I want to give Providence schools
Yeah,
a
I
high
think the
five.
world language is a good example
It
of
is,
that.
yeah.
It wasn't required in many other districts, but it has been with us, so we, we have the state to manage that.
and we've, the smart, yeah, like the testing, being able to test out of that requirement, we've been doing that for years, so that infrastructure is there, that practice and process is there. We've been, a lot of schools, and we've offered computer science for years as well, so, yes, there'll be some new standards in the course that we offer, but we've been offering that as well, so I don't,
The teachers will get the training
yeah,
needed.
yeah, and it's not and we already have teachers teaching it in every school, so they'll just attend a brief training, get trained on the new standard that's included, and so I don't want to, again, I wanna make sure I'm speaking carefully and not making a promise that I can't back up, but I don't have, right now, there's nothing jumping out to me that's glaring, that it makes me say, oh my goodness, we're not going to be able to do this, next year.
Yeah, and this is more commentary, but going back to what you said, like, just the, getting a diploma for, getting a diploma at one school can be different from getting another school. Yes, this is the graduation policy, but my experience getting English at this school could be completely different. And in this school, my experience getting a financial education could be completely, at this school could be completely different at that school. And I don't know if this is like the right, this is exactly the right policy, or if it's like just different in general, but, I don't know, that's always been my frustration with our education system. Like, I went to school, I had a really good English teacher, really good, doing NLA format, paragraph essays, all of that. And I had a student transfer over, it was a 10th grade academy, so I had a student transfer over from other high school, and they were like so far behind on essays, right? But they were getting straight A's at that other school. That's a long time ago, and I've heard different aspects of similar thing. I don't know if it's like something within this policy, but we know that it's not the same in each and every school in terms of getting a PTSD.
Yeah, I don't think that's within this policy, because I think, this policy honestly sets out to actually like define what will provide an equitable education for all students in Providence. That's rigorous, that, like holds them to high expectations. That's the policy, and then the practice or the implementation of it is, I think is what you're talking about.
I don't know what necessarily do around that in terms of the board. Does attendance ever get added in terms of the graduation policy, just in general, other districts?
It's not named in the, I don't know, it's not named by RIDE, so, if a district did it, would just be because they decided to. I would say that I would be surprised if a district did that. Gone away from that practice a long time ago. I would be surprised, but maybe it could, as a district, delegate decision, but.
And, and this is just me asking questions, I'm not even stating like if I believe one.
Yeah.
Say you have a student miss 50% school year, does that, and they still graduate, does that? I think that's just more of an open question. On that aspect. Obviously, we have students that go through X, Y, and Z, and into this, they're still able to obviously ask. I was just more curious.
I have a follow-up question again about sort of the equity across schools and what does a PPSD diploma mean? Can individual schools within PPSD require additional credits or things beyond this in order for students to graduate?
No, there are specific programs, so like our CTE programs, for example, the student attends and fills like at Juanita Sanchez, I keep calling it biomedical, but the program there, then they'll earn a diploma plus, so they'll have a designation of a diploma that they have also completed, plus or additional requirements in a certain area. The seal of biliteracy can be designated on a diploma, commissioner's seal. So it's a diploma, and then there would be additional designations, but the school wouldn't be able to adopt additional or different graduation requirements from.
So they could have, specific, that plus part, that specific program requirements, but the graduation requirements remain the same across all of our high schools.
What's the timeline if you wanted to add additional requirements to the district? If we have since we have like flexibility to add, like what would that timeline process?
Actually, I don't know, and I don't know the process for that either. I've been in this role since December. But
No worries.
but actually, I don't know. And I don't know if James knows, but Paula, we also have a chief academic officer, Paula Dillon. She couldn't be here tonight, but she'd be somebody who we definitely want to move into that with that kind of question. She's got a lot of experience with policy and with this, and then there might be an aspect she doesn't know either who gets inherited to. I'm not sure specific to our process. I don't actually know.
Because we have the flexibility to add add a requirement or add, if we wanted more extensive passage of whatever requirements we think. It seems like a flexibility. It's not this current board can take over, but the district in theory has that ability to do that.
Yeah, I don't know the timeline or process for that, just being honest about that, but.
Yeah, and I'm only asking that question because most of my term has been in this end of the takeover, so
I'm not sure. I will say, like, we're under obligation to communicate to the families of the including ninth grade students what the regulations are. And so we want to make sure we can do that on that timeline, but I'm not sure. I'm gonna take that question though and bring it to Paula, to Dr. Dillon, and see if she is able to follow up, or if we can follow up in some way about what that looks like.
And the question to my colleagues, do you think it would work well for like the board to get I don't want it to be like extensive, but it's like a presentation on that graduation policy.
So I think that's why I'm like, I have so many questions, it's so important. And you know what I mean? So I also feel like I just need to digest this a little bit more and also understand that RIDE locks into a lot of you all have done fabulous work, but so yes to your question, you know what I mean? I have another question after you answer.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and maybe a brief, a couple of slides presentation, and maybe having one of those slides sort of say, this is what RIDE tells us we have to do. I think touching upon like, here's what we were already doing in PPSD, we were ahead of the game on this, or here's what's changed. Just kind of highlighting that, and then that I think it may resonate with folks to emphasize that like this is the same for all of our high schools, no matter what program people are in. Certainly there are those differences with the CTE. I would agree with that. I think it would be great to hear a little bit more about this for the whole board. And you had another question.
Yeah, I guess I guess the question is with me, what I'm about to say, is this more of a regulation more than policy? I think I'm answering my own question. I think that, so I think about like organization, like an AS 220, but not just us, like youth programs across the city who I think can be very useful in helping students to achieve. So for example, like we do like an entire civics project, so to speak, that right now young people are coming to our program. And I like want to kick myself sometimes because I'm like, they should be getting like history credit for this, like the in-depth historical like knowledge and information that they're getting by being with us for a year. They should be getting credit. And it kills me that the same kids who are struggling in school to get the credits, they're coming to us every single day. And I'm like, y'all have the info, like y'all need the credits. I know Advanced Course Network is like a way, and I am looking into that and gonna talk with folks over there. I think one of the barriers, though, to places like an AS 220 is trying to figure out if we're a fit or a match, So I guess this is more of a suggestion, maybe for regulation, but I wonder if there is some way to also present what graduation requirements are to out-of-school programs and community-based programs so that we can get some technical assistance and training on, like, here are the standards and, like, this is the creative ways that y'all could be helping PPSD students to get credits, because I think we're ready and willing to do that, but there's a gap in knowledge of like not understanding quite how to do that. And I think there's a lot of lost opportunity for students because they're coming to programs like ours willingly, voluntarily, but might be simultaneously failing subjects that they're actually learning with us. Do you know what I mean? So I think there might be some opportunity to get PPSD and out of school programs to talk a little bit more, maybe with the ACN folks involved, and say, how can we bridge these now knowledge gaps, and like, how can we just make sure that we're serving students together and not just in isolated kind of ways, you know?
Any other questions from committee members on this policy?
I think we can motion to approve the first read, right? Yeah, motion to approve the first read. And I think with the understanding, if we get more of an in-depth presentation, not like too many slides, but usually we just have a report out to the board. Here's the policy, there's a recommendation, that this is so extensive and important. And we have new board members, we have I've had a lot of questions today, so I think it'd be a good informational session.
Yeah. So I'm thinking like slides on, maybe a slide on like 2025, 6, and 7 versus 2028, so some of the key differences or changes.
Yeah.
And like you said, what's RIDE requiring versus is there anything that PPSD is requiring that's separate or additional? And then also I heard you say, what are we already doing? It's been a PPSD practice already. Is there anything else that?
I think we add that aspect of if we wanted to make changes to curriculum, what is the guidelines for the board? Because the board, I'm pretty sure, would be interested. Just kind of.
So like, what is the process for?
We know during takeover, it's more of a recommendation than actual passage, but there'll be a day where you might have some of the board members that are currently on there, it might be on the next iteration of the board, then we can pass it.
And just kind of a side note, we are going to meet with the youth leadership council, student leadership. I can't remember the group that was here presenting on ethnic studies. We're going to go to one of their meetings and meet with them, hear from them. So
That's fantastic.
yeah. So the
That's good to know.
superintendent, Colleen, Paula, and I will be there at the April 23rd meeting
Oh.
out of the library.
Okay.
I know you're already, I have a question.
Could we just do a second?
Yeah, yes, sorry.
Do you want a second?
Oh, yes.
And then this one.
Discussion?
I knew you were in there.
Ms. Johnson?
So from the 2028 and beyond, is that changing with the new requirements? Is that gonna change how kids move up from middle school to high school?
What do you mean?
I mean, right now, they just move up from middle school to high school, regardless of the grades. Is that gonna change?
This doesn't have anything to do with that. This policy doesn't address that. That would be live somewhere else. It hasn't lived in this policy as far as middle school to high school. If you're looking at the word retention, what that was referring to was from 9th to 10th grade, 10th to 11th, 11th to 12th. And that's no longer in this policy. That will have its own standalone policy.
No, I was just looking at saying they're gonna graduate proficient in math and
Okay.
English language.
I get you.
I didn't know how far back you were starting working on that.
Yeah, no, this is the graduation policy for just high school.
Thank you.
Any further discussion on this policy? Right. And we have a motion already on the table to advance this for first read of the school board and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Excellent. So we will move this policy, and thank you all for being here and sharing all this robust information. And we look forward to seeing you maybe at our board meeting or someone from your team. And thanks for agreeing to do that as well. The next item on our agenda is a discussion relative to student code of conduct. As a reminder, at our last full board meeting, we looked at the student code of conduct first read, and we are just checking in on this policy to see if there have been any other Comments or suggestions or changes since that time? Mr. Scott, do you know if there's been any movement in this policy at all?
I have not, I did not get the chance to post the fire with Dr. O'Neill on that, but if there's any, if you wish to discuss as a committee, if there's any thoughts or suggestions, I can bring it back to it.
Committee members, did you have any concerns or further comments since our last meeting? Excellent. Okay, we will move on from that item. And then we also have a discussion relative to school board resolutions. At our last board meeting, there were a number of school board resolutions that were tabled and referred to this committee. Mr. Scott, can you remind us about those resolutions and share any progress or that we've made so far, or where are we
There are
with
a
this?
couple resolutions put in. Solicitor Ruggiero asked to pull a couple up for legal review. So the MLO resolution is rewritten to reflect things that we're actually doing. We've made tremendous strides as a district. I can certainly, I can close the loop with him, just make sure everything's good with it, send it back out to you as policy chair. The transportation one, he was reviewing, I'm not sure if he's finished the review on it. And let me pull up the list here. The prayer one was reviewed, there's no objection to it. There's actually, we do have a prayer policy that was existing as regulation and we did put as a policy from this committee next month. And that was the interaction I had with the solicitor on the resolutions. And maybe one more in there that I missed.
You might want to consider our internal process of resolutions to agenda. Because there was, when I had a couple resolutions passed at the fourth quarter last year, I put it through policy. But there's also been a lot of situations where resolutions will just go how they went last time, or president was on the agenda. I'm kind of agnostic in terms of either committee process or going to the agenda, because sometimes you want to have a resolution that is kind of timely, since resolutions are more, a lot of times in the advocacy space, but I think something we should talk about, like what's our process. I think certain language, like helping out some language, legal for those aspects, right, that was on the agenda, but then was like, whoa, let's pull some of that. So maybe it is checking legal, bringing the district in for resolutions, make sure, hey, like, we put this on the agenda, are we okay to move?
Maybe a checklist, I can take a first swipe at it and maybe present a checklist for resolutions to this committee next month. Figure out, for you to look at and, let's see if it's reasonable. Because some things are, you want to move quick because you might be doing something to support something on state health, getting a hearing next week.
Yes.
But we do need like a catch-all if there's something that has a legal implication that's put out there. We want to catch that. So I'll take a swipe at it and then see what you think as a committee, and we'll maybe make a recommendation to the board for the June meeting.
Yeah, like that. I think in the meantime, we'll just continue business as the resolutions, but getting something in writing, a checklist, would be helpful, not this board.
Yeah, I agree with that because it's also a thing of like, you want to say support a resolution that you believe in, but there might be a technical error or flaw. You don't want to like have to vote against it because of the technicality. So I'd rather catch it in advance so that way I could vote yes confidently, knowing that it's like, solid, that it doesn't get batted down off the technicality or something like that.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
I agree with that assessment. I think we need a clearer process so that we can, to Ms. Newman's point, feel confident that we're passing resolutions that aren't in conflict with other policies that we have. I guess I would ask that in that checklist or that framework that we consider both a legal review and just maybe even one step beyond that, just a cross-check of our other existing policies, because I think the intent of these specific resolutions and resolutions in general is to sort of make a statement of intent or belief that hopefully supports the overarching mission and vision together, right? Like, we don't want those to be in conflict, but we certainly don't want to paint ourselves into a corner where we're conflicting our own policies. I think that undermines our ability to do good work. Can we one more time? I'm sorry. So I think what you said, Mr. Scott, was that the transportation resolution is still under review.
I think you took a look at that. My conversation focused mostly on the MLO one and the prayer one. And I want to move back from the transportation one.
Okay.
I know he had some concern that there was maybe an unfunded mandate, but let me loop back with him on that, because that's the main focus of our conversation, so I'll make sure I'm accurately paraphrasing what he said.
Okay, and so then is our understanding that those resolutions would then come back to our committee next month once they're ready, or would they go back to the board?
I think
What is the
that's
appropriate
probably up to
process?
you as the chair. I don't know, it's been referred, you might need an action item to refer it back out. I can check with Charlie on that, that can be part of the process overview.
Okay, yeah, as I am new to this role, I want to make sure that I'm doing that correctly.
Because it's
Do you
an
have
info
insight on
item
that?
right now, so you can, I believe you can amend the agenda for info items, but for action items, you would be able to add them like on the fly.
Yeah, I guess my opinion is like, it was referred back to committee.
Right.
Right, for a hearing. Technically, these individual resolutions are not in front of us for an action. They're still in work.
Yes.
So I guess like officially, we would have to vote them out of committee, since the initial board action was to put them into committee. At least that's how I would interpret what happened at the last board meeting. And I think,
Do we refer them to, sorry to cut you off, do we refer them to committee or?
I believe that was the.
3 of them were referred to committee, yeah, the silent prayer, ELL services, and rights to free transportation. And we referred them to committee while they would be under legal review for cross-checking to make sure they weren't in conflict with any other existing policies, right?
Oh, we could do something like this. We could have, to just make it official, we could have the resolution, we could like schedule a policy committee meeting right before the board meeting, if we have time. We could schedule a policy meeting right before the board meeting, have those resolutions, pass those resolutions, go on the agenda for the board meeting. But I'm just thinking of what my process had in terms of doing that, if we wanted to just, because that's how I would interpret the action that we took as a board.
Let me see if it needs to go that far even.
Yeah.
So I'll look back. I should have an answer on that by tomorrow or Friday at the latest.
That sounds good. And I'm like I'm just, that's how I interpreted what.
And then I agree, that makes sense of what that process would be. And again, since a lot of us are new to this process, it's helpful to think through what does that look like. And then as part of this checklist, and if items sort of come before the board and they somehow get referred to this committee, in part of that checklist, how do we circle back with, for example, the board member who introduces that resolution, in addition, if they are or are not on that policy committee? Like, how do we make sure that if we're amending a resolution, that is still something that person wants to keep on?
Yeah.
That's like a hypothetical question, right? Like, if it changes significantly from what the original resolution was, like, is there a mechanism within this checklist or this process for the member who originally put forth the resolution?
I think that's something we'll just add to what we're gonna create, yeah.
Yeah, maybe
Does that
like,
make sense?
yeah, maybe
Absolutely.
moving forward, just make them info action or refer them, so that could be easy fix too.
I think Brandon drafts it, right? Like, if a non-policy committee member drafts policy, like, it's completely like changed around.
Yeah.
And I guess also like, as long, well, that's we got a conversation more.
What's
But,
the, I was gonna ask, what's the update? I think there was a prayer policy. that the equity officer cleared. What's the update on that?
I think we're looking at that for the May policy committee meetings, so it's done, it's been vetted. So it's probably on the agenda for May.
Can we strip the prayer resolution then and just?
Guess what, move on to policy?
Yes,
Okay,
let's do that.
that works.
Yeah, and that's exactly it, right? Because sometimes we might have resolutions, and then as we work through them, we realize that maybe it fits better with the policy, but maybe it doesn't. And so I think creating a clearer process for ourselves as a board, so that we know that issues don't just get dropped or left behind, but they're coming before the board in a way that we can take action one way or the other is really critical. Any other questions or comments around school board resolutions right now? Excellent. Do I have a motion to adjourn this meeting? So moved. Second, all in favor? Aye. Excellent. Thank you so much, and thank you, Mr. Superintendent.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for the meeting, the time committee, a lot of fun.
Did do a lot.
Angel.
I know, I'm like, I
Well,
Thank you so much for sitting through all of that, like,
Oh, yeah.
discussion.